This last month was about $400,000 US. So we're actually on track for this year to reach 2.6 million over the financial year. The first 3 days that we launched this, we made $50,000.
Sarah Renae Clark is a colouring book artist who will make $2.6 million from her YouTube channel this year. Her primary product is the Colour Cube, a physical cube which helps artists to select colours for their work. I asked Sarah how she got started on YouTube, how much money she makes from each of her products, how she found a manufacturer for the Colour Cube, how she hired her team of 7 people, which distribution channels convert best to sales, which software stack she uses to operate her business, what she thinks about AI's effect on art, and how creators can get over their fear of starting something new. Sarah also revealed a brand new physical product she plans to launch next year. Sarah, it's great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to kick off by asking, how did you get started on YouTube?
So funny enough, I actually was making products before I did YouTube. I had a little e-commerce store and I did pretty much every other social media platform first. I was a little bit hesitant to jump on video. But then we had some other YouTubers that kept doing videos about some of our digital products. And every time someone else did a video, our sales just went up. I think the first month that we ever hit $10,000 a month was actually from someone else's video about one of our products. And my first instinct was, we need to find more people to make videos about our products. We need to sign up some affiliates. And eventually, a few years later, I realized actually maybe we should make the videos. We should do this. And it was initially supposed to be like a bit of a side thing for the business. But after 1 or 2 videos, I got hooked. I loved it. And my husband, who has a bit of a background in video production, just nerded out to the extreme. So, I mean, anyone who's seen our studio tour would know we kind of went all in on cameras and gear and everything. So it just became a really obvious fit for us, and I'm surprised we didn't do it earlier.
So was there a way that you got over that initial hesitancy to be on video?
Yeah, so for me, I have a very big attitude of like trying to embrace failure to learn. So before I started on YouTube, I was starting to do like live videos in my Facebook group at the time because it was like it's a small audience, it's a closed group, there's like a bit of a safety net. And I treated those videos as get my failures out, get all the mistakes out so that by the time it matters, not that it didn't matter, but, you know, by the time I had a bigger audience, by the time it was more public, I had a bit of confidence. And so if you look at my first ever YouTube video, it's actually not too bad. If you look at my first Facebook video, you can see me basically shaking.
Right. So had you always been into art? Did you have another career before that?
I was very creative most of my life, like through school, through high school. But then after leaving school, I did do some graphic design. I tried to sort of have a freelance business as graphic design on the side, but I actually ended up in childcare of all things, completely non-creative, well, different kind of creativity, I guess, but not art. And I kind of stopped creating art. I stopped drawing. I stopped doing anything. It wasn't until after having kids and I was looking for a creative outlet again, and I realized how much art was that for me, which actually kind of is the start of this whole business, because when I had my son, I was looking for something to do. We actually started off, I tried to make a game, an app, and it flopped because I didn't know how to make apps. And when you're in a market like that, indie developers don't want to support someone who's not actually a developer and has just basically hacked their way into making this game through, you know, pre-made templates and stuff. But then I discovered coloring books. That was a huge trend right back when I was starting this. And I looked down and went, I could do that. I could create that. I didn't even own a set of colored pencils at this point. I just looked at it and went, I could draw the black and white. That's kind of my style. And I was a little bit scared of color at that time. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. It took off. We got right in at the time where coloring books were a huge trend. It was back in 2015. And so I created a digital 20-page PDF with coloring pages. I sold it for $3 and we sold 80 in the first month with no audience. And so we kind of stopped and went, okay, maybe there's something to this. And it gave me a product to market. And then once I started doing marketing, I just got addicted to the entire business building process, even more than the art, if I'm being honest. And it's all kind of just kept growing from there.
Yeah. So how did the channel grow? I mean, it's interesting that you kind of did things in reverse, where you were kind of had a product mind and then you saw YouTube as a way to market that. But how fast did the channel grow? Did you see presumably a lot of growth in 2020 when everyone was kind of stuck inside, or was it gradual?
Yeah, so I started this channel in 2020, and it did grow pretty fast at the start. I did have an existing YouTube channel technically because I was using it. I had a blog and I was using it to like film a tutorial and put it on the blog. But I'm talking 5 videos, and there was no system or structure. I didn't see YouTube as a growth platform on its own. It was just a placeholder for my videos. So when I decided let's make like a weekly series, that was in 2020. And I think it was our first year we got to the 100,000 subscribers because we kind of just, I am very much the kind of personality where if I decide to do something, I go all in. And we go all in and we go all in for a while and then we kind of test it out. And then after that, we kind of go, okay, do we want to keep doing this or do we want to do something else? And often it'll be a complete switch. Trying to do that, trying to be more strategic about not just jumping all over the place now. But YouTube was that. We'd done all the other socials and then it was, all right, it's time to grow YouTube. Everything else was almost in a bit of like maintenance mode, on a bit of the back burner. We'd automated a lot of it and it was 100% in. And so I nerded out on studying it. I followed a lot of channels. I couldn't have told you who the big YouTubers were before we started. And then after we started, it was like our whole world. And I kind of just went all in.
What is the deal with adult coloring books, and did you stumble upon that? Was it strategic? Were you researching trends or were you just into it? How did you discover that this was a huge trend?
I can't really remember. I don't think I was actively looking for it at the time. I believe actually at the time I thought that my creative venture was going to be like making t-shirts, right? Which now I look at and laugh a bit because I tell people not to do merch. It's their first thing. But I thought that was, this is the new idea. And it was, I think, just a chance moment of seeing everyone's talking about it. It's in some news articles. And the style of drawing, like the mandalas that people draw on the patterns, was very similar to some art that I'd already done in the past. I used to do a lot of just like doodling in my school diaries and stuff like that. And I just, over a weekend, thought I'll have a go at this. And it was that weekend that I created that first book. And just the fact that it sold so well made me look a little bit closer as to what is going on with this. This trend is huge. And I think in the first year that I was making coloring books, I made about 7 or 8 different just digital printout coloring books. And it wasn't until about 6 months in that I was like, okay, what's the next step? Can we get these on Amazon? Can we do something? And it's funny because now I look back at all those books and having created so many books in such a short time, now I'm a bit embarrassed by the art in those. But I mean, that's normal, I think, for anyone.
That's the process.
Yeah, that's it. You go and you cringe at your old work. You cringe at your old videos. It just shows that you're growing.
Do you think it's kind of a craving for being offline? Like people have so many screens, and also a little bit of it's relaxing to do a coloring book?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that, and I'm sort of this year really exploring this concept more. I do think that there are a lot of people who have lost their creativity. They feel like they were creative as a kid. They're an adult. They don't identify as a creative person anymore. And coloring books have this way of being almost like a gateway art. So for someone who's not creative, who doesn't feel like they can draw, they can pick up a coloring book and it's not as scary. They can actually create and draw in that and start simple. But you can also take coloring books to an artistic level. And that's one thing that I sort of try and teach people is here's how to get started. Let's not be scared. Let's pull out the pencils. And then it encourages them that actually they can be creative. And then when you start being creative with coloring books, you can really take them to an amazing level. You end up basically creating art. So I kind of see it as the gateway art. And that's something that I'm really looking at more this year in particular is what are the other gateway arts that are out there that can help adults who don't feel creative actually rediscover their creativity.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll come back to that. So let's maybe talk through the product iterations, because you had this huge hit with the Color Cube, but you had a series of products before that. So let's maybe talk about how you got up to that, and then we'll talk about the complete sort of revenue breakdown of your business. Yeah,
so I started out with digital coloring books. That was the first thing. And then from there, I was looking at, I made a few just free printables for people that helped them with their coloring. So a lot of people that have pencils buy multiple sets of pencils and they want to know exactly what the color is. So they just want it out on almost like an Excel spreadsheet chart that they can color, write the numbers. So I started selling templates for that. And I found that often the templates and the tools sold more than the actual coloring book. And so that kind of caught my attention. But then I started on my blog, I posted some free color palettes to help people choose colors. And it's something that for me has always been fairly intuitive, like matching colors together. But I put them all on the blog, and these blog posts were shared on Pinterest more than anything else I'd created. Like one blog post was shared 50,000 times on Pinterest, and everyone kept asking for more. And then people started asking, can I get this in a printable? And I was like, okay, it was free. It was free. And if you went on Pinterest, you could find thousands of them. But people started asking for a printable. So we put in a printable and we made it for $5. And everyone loved it so much that I thought, well, what if we take all the blog posts of these color palettes? We could put them all together into one thing. And I started thinking about what that would look like. And we ended up with our product that's called the Color Catalog, which it has 250 color palettes in it. It's a PDF, but it's all interactive. It's got buttons to try and help people get to the right colors quicker. And that was the product that an affiliate used, that our business was earning about $1,000 or $2,000 a month. And all of a sudden we had $10,000 a month when we launched this product. And since then, it became our biggest selling product out of everything else we were doing. So for every one coloring book we'd sell 10 of this color catalog. And I was always really surprised because you could find this information for free on my website, on Pinterest, on Instagram. But yet people wanted to spend, it was $30 for this PDF. So we started looking at how can we bundle this? How can we make it bigger? It was our biggest seller for 4 years. And even then we launched our YouTube channel, that grew it even further. But the biggest comment we kept getting from our audience was, I wish I could buy this in a hard copy book. And we'd never done that because we'd only ever printed via Amazon. And for us to print this as print on demand on Amazon, it would have cost us $80 for all the colored pages, let alone then trying to sell that to an audience. So it would have been very, very little margin and a very expensive product. So we never did it. But then after doing a few other physical products a few years later, we stopped and went, maybe it's time to actually look at this. And I thought it through about how I use it and my reasons why I was hesitant to do it as a book. And eventually through some sort of development and research and ideas, came up with the concept of creating cards so that people could look at multiple ones and they could mix and match. And so that became the Color Cube, which is this here. So this is now our product that in the first 3 days that we launched this, we made $50,000 off this product. And ever since then, this product has been the biggest seller in our store by far. It's the thing that, and again, I think it's because it really appeals to the non-creative person, but it can also be used by artists as well. So it's got this massive broad appeal that helps people to be creative. So rather than being another coloring book among thousands of coloring books online, this is a unique product that the only real competitor for it is free color palettes on Pinterest or the color wheel. And people are scared by the color wheel. You have to learn color theory. So this makes it easier.
So I guess that raises two questions. One, does your audience really love physical products more than digital products? Because typically digital products have better economics, right? You don't have any cost of shipping this thing to people. And then secondly, how do you get that made? I mean, you started in a product space, but if you say had an existing art channel and you wanted to get a product made, how do you make sure you get a great manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, that for us was probably the scariest part of all this. So in terms of digital versus physical, the demand for physical for us has always been greater, but there are a lot of extra complications and costs. And then you have to be able to fulfill the orders. You have to be able to deal with all that. You have to also deal with returns a lot more. So digital products are 100% easier. I would always recommend people start with digital products, even because if you put all your money into a physical product and it doesn't sell, then you've got a warehouse full of products that don't sell and you're out of pocket. If a digital product doesn't sell, you just move on. You just do the next thing. The most that you've lost is time. So I always recommend to people start with digital products. Even use digital products to figure out what your audience wants in developing a physical product, which is kind of the approach we've taken. Kind of test things digital, whether it's free downloads or a $1 product or trying something like a $30 product, to then help us decide what our next physical product is. When it comes to the actual manufacturing, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have contacts or anything to make this work. We've had to kind of figure it all out from scratch, as a lot of people would. And so our first physical product was actually a yearly planner. And we couldn't get it manufactured in China because we didn't have the quantity. We only wanted 200 or 300 because we didn't need 1,000. And because being a yearly planner, we didn't sell them in the 12 months. They were worth nothing. So we found first a manufacturer in America. I don't even know how we found them. We just did, but they did the fulfillment. So they sent out the orders as well as the manufacturing. We're like, great. And to be completely honest, I would never recommend them. They made so many mistakes in the manufacturing. We had in a yearly planner, July would just be missing, so like major mistakes. The fault rate was like 12% or something. That's just the ones that we found out about. So we actually learned the hard way. We made we made mistakes, but we had a bad manufacturer. And so we learned what not to do. But it did, even though it was a mistake, and even then we actually manufactured in China, we did a print run of stickers that like people can use to color in. Oh, well, I'll show you to explain. They color in the stickers and then stick them in their planners, right? So like a little sticker book. So we tried manufacturing an order of them in China because it was a smaller product. It was a bit easier to take a risk. And we messed that up too. We ended up with stickers that people couldn't color in because the sticker was too glossy. And that was just a communication issue because when dealing with China, you've got the language barrier and things are very, very literal. So those mistakes were things that we did work through at the start. And we just very much, like both my husband and I, are very analytical people. So we just looked at everything and was like, okay, so we know to do this, we know not to do this. Ideally, if we could do this again, this is what we do. But because we started on smaller runs, again, it was that sort of low risk. I think we did admittedly lose a few $1,000s on the sticker book print, but then we knew what not to do. So again, this is why I think digital products is a great place to start because the mistakes are much lower cost. But then there is a process of like, sometimes you have to fail to learn what not to do to then do the right thing.
Right. So where did you end up getting a manufacturer?
So the planner I actually had, my advice would always be to go to like Alibaba if you are looking at, say, China manufacturers. But even then, it's tricky. You've got to test people out. You've got to look at different things. The one bit of advice that I was given with that is that if you can find out the region that covers a certain thing, because China kind of works in regions. So like a lot of paper manufacturers are in the one city. A lot of button manufacturers are in another space. And so if you can kind of find the area that covers what you're doing, you're more likely to get a manufacturer and not, say, an agent or a trader. And so then you can kind of a bit more easily try a few people, find out. You do have to pay for samples as well. That's something we learned. I was like, if we're wanting to order 1,000, why are you making us pay $30 for a sample? But until you've actually got an existing relationship, you do have to just pay that cost and then get those things. So we actually had someone that we managed to get working for the stickers, and that was all good. And then I got a cold email, which is lucky, really. A cold email from someone that said, I can make your planner. And at this point, we were very unhappy with the American company that was doing the planner. And we were like, well, maybe it's worth a look. And so we showed them all the photos of the one we already had and said, all right, let's have a go. Can you make a sample of this? And they offered us some different options and we got the sample from them. It probably cost us, I think, about $80 to get the sample. Sample arrived and it was better quality than the American one. It was more beautiful. There were features that the American one didn't even allow us to have, that this allowed us to have. And we finally had, I think, an order of potentially 1,000 that we could now afford to actually do the manufacturing with them. And it was from this cold email that we actually found our perfect manufacturer, that is a manufacturer that now does everything for us. So I can't say that's a method that works for everyone because usually we'd be ignoring cold emails.
I guess I would ask, is it then okay for people to start off going on Alibaba, put something out, and then, people will reach out. Just put something out that people reach out to you and say, I can do this better.
Yeah, we get a lot of emails from companies that say, I could make this for you. And it's like, well, that's part of the outreach process. So maybe it is a case of not dismissing those things and actually taking a stab sometimes, just having a go. I think the biggest thing with any manufacturer you're dealing with over there is just being really, really clear on the communication. Like things that you think are common sense, spell out anyway. And for us, that was the experience that we learned over time. Even with, we got a sample, we loved it. We got the final product and the paper had changed. And when we're dealing with an art product, the paper can't change. It needs to be exactly what we're expecting. And so from then on, We spelled out exactly the type of paper that we want and we got a code for it and it was written in the invoice every time. So a lot of it is just being really clear with communication, getting lots of samples, making sure you're 100% happy. And if you can do all that, I feel like a lot of the manufacturers over there will put in the effort. I don't think you're going to find a dud that's trying to scam you as much as like if you do your due diligence and you get the samples. I think that's probably my advice. It's one of those things where I do feel like maybe we got a bit lucky, but maybe it's because we did the due diligence that we got lucky. So it's sort of hard. And because I know for us, that was a very scary process. Now a new product feels easy because we've got a contact. But finding that contact was it's kind of like trying to hire staff. Once you've got them, you're like, great, that wasn't hard, but it was. Hiring people is really, really hard. Finding a manufacturer is really hard.
Okay, so we've got kind of the backstory in the product. I guess what I'm super interested in, and everyone's always interested in, is what's your top line revenue and then how does it break down across all your different product lines?
Yeah, so this last month we actually, this last month was about $400,000 US in the business. And so we're actually on track for this year to reach 2.6 million over the financial year. Most of that is products. So when it comes to like YouTube and all the different ways that you can make revenue, whether it's sponsors, ads, all that kind of stuff, 95% of our revenue is actually from product sales. Now that is a mix of digital and physical, but about 80% of that now is our physical products. So a huge portion of that is the Color Cube. Basically, before we started YouTube, I've got the numbers here. I'll put them on the screen. Before we started YouTube, we had reached a point of making $64,000 a year, US dollars, off digital products mostly, with a few physical products. Once we got on video, that tripled. Our first year on YouTube, even with about 20 to 30,000 subscribers, that's when my husband quit his job. Both of us were full-time. We were making $200,000 a year at that point. And then once we released the Color Cube, that's when it shot up to like 1.6 million that first year. And then now it's just growing and growing as we learn how to market that better, as we look at products that we can kind of put beside that. And as we're also just thinking of what are the other products for that exact audience, that sort of audience that are looking for that gateway access to art.
So I was going to ask, if you do advertising or sponsorships or any of the other things that people get into, but it sounds like that's a very tiny portion of your business.
Yeah, so we, our YouTube AdSense, I think makes up about 2% of our revenue, which is obviously vastly different to most people that are making YouTube videos. And the good thing about that is that like our first million we made when we only had 100,000 subscribers. And that's kind of a story that you don't hear very often. But it's not to say that the money still came a lot from our subscribers. It was actually building that audience and really connecting with what people need and making a product about the audience and not a product about me. So not merch, but actually finding a gap in the market that now our product goes beyond our audience. So I do take brand deals sometimes, but because our products fund so much of what we do, it gives me a whole lot of freedom to only work with brands that I really want to work with. So I only ever do sponsorships now with a brand that I would have promoted for free anyway, just because it is nice. It's nice to have those partnerships with brands and to have that ongoing thing. And it's like, if you're promoting them throughout an entire video, they probably should be paying for it. But we say no to most offers, even some that we would have said yes to in the past, because we don't feel like we're held at ransom by that. We get to make a lot of creative decisions. Even this year, doing less videos on YouTube because our team has been stretched a little bit too far and my kids have been unwell. So we've pulled back, and it hasn't affected our bottom line because most of our income comes from our product.
And then, you mentioned you have a team, and I guess, of that top line, what kind of margin, what kind of costs do you incur, and then how much ends up being margin? Because obviously you're shipping a physical product that has costs, you have returns. So what's kind of the breakdown on your top line versus your profit margin?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not that familiar with these numbers. My husband, Shane, has taken on so much of that side of the business that I get to focus on being creative. But I do think off the top of my head, I think our Color Cube margin, I think it costs us about $15 to get it out to someone's door, from the manufacturing and the building to getting it to someone. I don't think that includes marketing costs. We do actually run paid ads to it now. That's kind of, I think, and then the product is $30. Now that's $30 for the one, but then if we sell a bundle of them, obviously that line drops a bit further. If we bundle it with digital items, which we do, the digital item add-on is pure profit from there. So we do have a pretty good margin with a lot of this stuff, and we are actually looking this year at how can we get into wholesale with the margins that we have, because I do feel like we've got room for that, and I'd love to see these products in some of the big chain stores.
Right. So you do deals with like Michael's or a US art store, and then
would love to, yeah. That's on our goal for this year.
Then you don't have to ship the product, and it's also marketing because people might not know about you or your channel, and they walk in and they say, "Hey, this is a really cool product."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I guess what I'd typically be interested in next is your social distribution, because I mean, it's certainly a business that you've started the reverse way from most people, but kind of how does your distribution break down? I know you from YouTube. Where else do you have distribution? I think you started Instagram, was big for you early on. What's the percentage breakdown?
Yeah, so YouTube is by far our biggest. Most of our other social platforms sit around the 20 to 50,000 subscribers, whereas YouTube is like 320,000. So we actually started on Facebook. I had a Facebook page and then a Facebook group. And we've always kind of just like focused on one channel and then really kind of got that working, got it fixed up and either outsourced it to one of my team or automated a lot of the stuff, a lot of the content. So we started on Facebook. We actually did Pinterest next, and Pinterest really blew things up for us because a lot of the content we share on my website, like our blog posts, do really, really well on Pinterest, especially the color palette. So there was one time before we started YouTube where Pinterest was referring 90% of our sales, which in terms of don't put all your eggs in one basket, we actually experienced that very heavily because right before I started YouTube, my Pinterest account got caught up in a glitch and it was deleted off Pinterest, like my entire website. So nobody could share anything from my website. It was just missing off Pinterest. So we took a bit of a hit from that. And that was around the time we're like, well, time to go all in on YouTube then. We did have Instagram. I've had a love-hate relationship with Instagram for many, many years. I feel like we're finally starting to figure out Instagram now. For a long time, that just got stuck at 10,000 and we just didn't really know what we were doing or not doing or whatever. And we do have TikTok, but it's very much an afterthought for me. It's like I usually just repurpose stuff from elsewhere. I haven't put the time into growing that. And then our other big one for us is actually our email list. We have from the start had an email list. We actually delete people from the emails regularly to try and keep it as a really active list. So we have like a 50% open rate, might be 49, which is way above industry standard with that kind of thing. And I do believe actually that when we started video, all of these other things did grow. So people know us from YouTube, but when our YouTube channel grew, our Facebook page grew, our Instagram grew, our email list grew. And a lot of that stuff that took a lot of work beforehand actually just got easier because once people had a face to connect with, once they had an opportunity to see me, and I guess there's a little bit of a parasocial relationship that starts to happen when you get on video, but we found that every other platform kind of just naturally followed. So our email list now is about 50,000, and that's including we delete 1,000 or 2,000 people off that list every month. We send out an email that's like, you haven't opened our emails, do you still want to hear from us? And if they don't reply, they get taken off. So that's how we keep those open rates high, but we still managed to grow it regardless.
Right. Sounds like video is very good for building trust because they can see who you are. They can learn your backstory. But I was going to ask, which one converts best, but it seems like it's quite holistic. Like maybe someone sees a YouTube video, then they end up on the email list and then they read that for a while. Is that your typical funnel?
Yeah. So in terms of like a funnel, we see most social as being that top of funnel. So like an awareness thing. So even in my YouTube videos, I tried it once and it didn't really work, but I try not to sit there and plug the color cube. I don't sit there and go, here's what it does. You can buy it on my website. What I do is I'll be working on an art piece and I'll just open it up and I'll be like, okay, so today I'm going to use this color palette. And that's the most it'll get mentioned in a video and it'll just be linked in the description. And I found that by keeping things more organic like that, for one, people don't tune out because if you go into any kind of sales mode, whether it's your core fans or whatever, people tend to then like switch their brain into, oh, this is an ad. Okay. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, people tune out and they pay less attention. At least that's what I think. And so by keeping this more organic and it's more, here, let me help you, we've then found that people build up a curiosity about what was that? What is that product? And then the same with a lot of our sales. So we actually can't tell you exactly where the sales come from. Some of it we can, but often we expect that someone will find me on YouTube. They'll see that first thing. Maybe then when they're on Instagram, they start seeing other people posting with the cards because we've tried to also make it a very pretty product so that people want to put it in their photos. We also do retargeting ads on, and just ads in general, on Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram. So a lot of people come And they then see those ads. And once you click on our website, I'm sorry, you're going to get harassed by those ads. So you'll probably find that now. You'll be seeing the ads
already
everywhere.
got an ad on Facebook this morning. I was like,
right?
It's like, get the color cube.
So once you've been at our website, I'm sorry, but we will retarget you. And so a lot of people then see it over and over on those kind of things. And so our ads and our email list is where we do the harder sell. That's where so for us, it's like if we can get someone to our website, whether it's from a freebie or an article or just to find out what this is, that can all be a very light touch and kind of, I've heard people talk about this like waltz and wed technique. You don't meet a stranger and propose to them. You introduce them, you ask them out for a coffee, you get to know them long before you start a relationship. It's kind of like that. So we have a lot of awareness campaigns out there in all of our social media. Our YouTube channel is not built to sell the color cube. Our YouTube channel is built for its own purpose. We kind of see our videos as one of our products. Our video content is a service that we offer, but that if that happens to get people curious, that they come and have a look, then that all benefits. And then our hard sell is through ads and it's through our email list. Our email list is a bit more behind the scenes, but if there's a sale, it's going in there and we're a lot more happy to promote. Whereas socials, we tend to try to not promote, keep it social.
It strikes me that the YouTube channel is sort of the tip of the iceberg on quite a big business with a lot of moving parts. Last time I checked, you had sort of 5 team members. How big is the team? How does it break down? Like, what kind of roles are people doing on the team?
We have 7 at the moment. A lot of people in our team are kind of helping with a lot of things because that's just naturally what happens in a small business. But we do have one person who's a graphic designer. So she does a lot of, now with a lot of our products, like our yearly planner that we do, there's a lot of just formatting that needs to happen. There's a lot of just making sure dates are correct and getting all the artwork in. So she does a lot of that and deals with a lot of our product designs. Then we have another illustrator who's just joined our team, who's actually helping now to create more of that content as well, to work on some 3D animations, to try and help us with anything we can use in those paid ads. And we also have someone else who now heads up our social media. So she just kind of monitors all, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. She kind of heads up all of those so that I don't have to, because it reaches, you can't do everything, right? So we've always tried to sort of, we also have now someone who's joined as a writer, and we do have someone who is our community management person. So emails that come to her first. If there's order problems, she takes care of them. So our goal's always been to try and, if we're going to hire someone, to try and take the load off me so that I can focus on the people in our business, like our community. I can focus on the content, and I can focus on the art, because a lot of our products do rely on my artwork in them. So I become a huge bottleneck in that way. And so any other job that we can sort of palm off to someone else, we try to do. My husband at the moment does all of the editing, but he also does all of our finances, deals with manufacturers, does all the logistics. So he's kind of like the COO, but also our main editor. So we're actually in the process of trying to find another editor. I think that's probably our next hire. But one thing we have tried to do, which is again different to most people, is that we've hired everyone in-house. We really like, rather than working with remote workers, we really like the team building aspect that we've been able to have from having everyone come to our studio and all work on something together. We have a team day once a month where we take everyone out to lunch and we all just, I guess, connect and come up with ideas, share what the next big thing is that we're working on. And I found that by having everyone together, it's really helped to keep a consistency in our messaging as well. So like the person who's helping with the writing or whoever's working on the social posts and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot more, I guess, collaboration, and a lot more of it comes from me because everyone is around me all the time. So we all start to gather this similar vibe, I guess, across everything we do. And that's really important to me.
Right. I want to come back to something that you said earlier about don't do merch. And then, because the standard thing for a lot of artists on YouTube to do is they put their art on merch and then they launch on, I guess, YouTube Shop, and then you have a link and you can buy it. So firstly, why no merch? And secondly, thoughts on YouTube Shop or TikTok Shop or all these kind of commerce things that people are launching.
Yeah. So I actually, when I have people come to me and say, what can I do for my audience, what the product is, my advice is always listen to the audience. The more you're involved in your community, and not just your comment section, but where does your community hang out elsewhere? Are they on Reddit? Are they on Twitter? Do they have Facebook groups? Do they have other areas? And if you go into those spaces and you listen to the people, you will naturally come up with ideas that fill holes in the audience. Find common questions they have or common problems they have. And that's where the best product ideas come from. The thing about a merch product is that it relies on your brand and your parasocial connection for it to sell. Someone's not going to buy a t-shirt with your brand on it unless they really, really love what you do. Even more so if there's a pop culture sort of attached to it. So someone like Mr. Beast can sell merch. Absolutely. People will wear it because they're proud to wear it. They're proud to share it. But if we're talking about YouTubers that have 100,000 followers, only your core audience is going to buy that merch product. So you need a much bigger audience to actually then make a living off that merch product. And with any products, the more you sell, the cheaper it gets. So if you're only selling 50 of something, your margin on that's only going to be $3 or $4. If you can sell 5,000 of something, your margin's going to be more like $40. There's a much bigger difference when you can do bigger products. And merch, I just don't think is scalable in the same way. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it shouldn't be the first product that you do.
It also strikes me that a lot of your products, they solve someone's problem, whether it's a digital download, whether it's the color cube, they have a specific problem and they don't even need to necessarily be a big enough fan to wear your face on their t-shirt. They just might want to buy color cube because it's useful.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. Recently we went to a big trade show in New Orleans. And when I said to people, I'm Renae Clark, they're like, oh, okay, what do you do? And I say, I make the color cube. And they go, oh, I know the color cube. So by creating a product that doesn't rely on my face, it's actually allowed us to sell a lot more because it's reached people. I even had, so my sister had someone come bragging to her about this new color cube that they bought. And look at this, it's amazing. And she's like, I know, my sister made it. So we're actually finding that a lot more people know about the color cube or have the color cube and have no idea who I am. And that, I mean, some people might not like that, but for us, that means that the selling potential of this product is huge. It means that we can look at going wholesale. Whereas if it was relying on my brand, that's now put a cap on what we can sell. That relies on me growing my audience, on me consistently being the front of everything.
And it sounds like that's the dream for a lot of YouTubers. They end up maybe with products like courses where it's about you presenting, or maybe you're doing live education and cohort courses. But what you've achieved is the ability to kind of disconnect yourself from the product, which then makes it far more scalable. So that seems like kind of the dream that everyone wants to achieve. So coming back to shops, stores, do you use YouTube's commerce features? What do you think about them? Have you tried TikToks or any of those?
Yeah, so personally, no. I don't necessarily think they're bad. I think they work really well in a way that people don't have to leave the platform to buy. And that ultimately, if you can have less hoops for your audience to jump through, that's always a good thing. The thing with my situation, so we don't even use Shopify, which I, again, recommend to a lot of people, start on Shopify. But we have a full e-commerce website. Shane, my husband, has a lot of experience in building websites. So he has built this thing custom to exactly what we want. So every time we have a new product, we can think through every little step and there's nothing that stops us from creating what we want on that. Whereas if we were to use something like Shopify, and then further to that, if we're to use things like the YouTube and TikTok tools, this creates limitations for us. And it kind of almost puts a stop in our funnel, because if we're to sell, say, one of these cubes, if we're to sell this on YouTube, we'd sell one. But by selling this on our website, we have a process where we show them, here's all the features, and then here's also the alternatives, here's the upsells, here's the bundles. And as a result of that, more than, I'd say, 70 or 80% of people that decide to buy this cube end up, rather than buying this $30 cube, buying the $100 bundle that has 2 cubes and all the digital add-ons. And we get a much bigger cut from that because, like, the digital costs us nothing, for example, and even just doubling their order. And so we found by taking people through our process, which is an extra step for them from leaving, say, YouTube, but once they're in our space, once they're in our system, we recently just launched the pre-orders for the next planner, which is, again, around a $50 product. We've had orders coming in for $250 because we've been able to take them through our process and show them, here's all the ways you can use this and here's all the add-ons. And by putting them in our space without the distractions of YouTube or other videos, they're now in buying mode and they're exploring. Whereas when they're on YouTube, and this is again why I sort of say to people, going too promo heavy on YouTube isn't really a good idea. They're watching videos, they're in entertainment mode. They're not necessarily in shopping mode. And so anything on there that is shopping related or ads, even sponsors, is a distraction from why they've chosen to be there. Whereas once they're on the website, the mode of their brain, it has changed, and now they're exploring and they're sort of ready with their wallet. And honestly, getting people to spend the first dollar is the hardest. So once you can get them to spend $1, spending 50 and then potentially spending 100 is a much smaller step than just that first step.
Right. You want to sort of own the lead. You want to get them onto your email list. You want to get them through your funnel. So what is your software stack? I think I heard you're on WordPress.
Yes, so we use WordPress. We have the template we use, if anyone's curious, is called Avada, but we have customized it massively to do that. So we use WooCommerce for a lot of our stuff. Emails we actually do through MailChimp, which surprises a lot of people because it's kind of the one that everyone complains about. But we've actually looked at a lot of different options, and because what we do is so e-commerce heavy, we found it to do really well. Whereas things like ConvertKit is great if someone has a course, it's great for those kind of email funnels. I didn't find it to be as good for plugging into WordPress like we do. And a lot of the other options out there as well are either way more complicated than we need because our email system's pretty simple. We're not doing like 5-day challenges or anything like that. We do a weekly newsletter and we have a freebie that people get on the first thing. So look, my email list actually has a lot of room for growth. As there's always a million things to do in the business. You've got to pick the right ones. But we found from what we've done that actually MailChimp works quite well for us.
Yeah, Mashable was a WordPress blog, so I'm super familiar with changing the HTML and breaking the whole website and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So next steps in terms of, okay, so I mean, the Color Cube is just kind of a massive hit, and it sounds like one of the next steps is to move into wholesale with that, get that into stores, have that as a marketing channel. I also noticed that one of the things you're doing is starting to work with Nebula, which is a online streaming service where you pay a subscription. So what kind of areas are you trying to expand into next?
Yeah, so Nebula is one. So what we're doing with our YouTube videos now is I've actually, rather than doing like a weekly video or even once every 2 weeks, we really want to, again, because we have the freedom to do this kind of stuff, right? I was like, I don't want to just chase trends on YouTube just for the sake of it. I actually want to do stuff that I'm really passionate about. And so a lot of, after having done YouTube for 2, maybe 3 years now, we're like, you know what I'd love to do more of is like really nerd out on topic. So we're actually doing less videos, more like 1 a month. And I'm going deep on a topic. So the last one I did was learning how to draw from scratch. But in that, I'm also like interviewing other specialists. So we interviewed a bunch of different people that teach people how to draw and included that all. And because this ends up with like an hour-long video, we're actually putting that hour-long video over on Nebula. So it's kind of like extra content for people that want it. And then we're cutting it down a little bit shorter for YouTube. So Nebula gives us the option to create stuff that wouldn't necessarily work with an algorithm and to make stuff that is more true to what we want to do. But then YouTube, we still obviously want to create stuff. So we kind of have like a YouTube version and then the extended version. On top of that, with Nebula, I'm also this year working on a Nebula original series called Pigment of Your Imagination. And it's actually all about color psychology and how color works in our world. And it's something that I nerd out and really love almost the science behind color, despite having basically flunked science in school. It fascinates me, just colors in general and how we perceive them. And this is something, again, that probably would do it right on YouTube, but I think it really, I don't think YouTube would do it justice. And so instead, we've got the Nebula team helping with that, and we're going to build something. And it's going to be like the kind of documentary that you would find on Netflix. And that's something that I get to be a part of, which is really exciting. In terms of our business with the products that we're working on next, we are trying to figure out, like we have a few products we've committed to with our audience. We're releasing a new coloring book this year. We have our coloring planners that we release every year, but we are also looking at what is our next big color cube. What is our next big thing that is that sort of accessible to everyone, can take it to different levels, solves a problem, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if I can even say what it is yet because we've only just like come up with some ideas.
You can, come on. You did 2 so far, right? You did 2 color cubes? So this is the real inside stuff that only my team know. We've been, so a lot of people have been asking us for a 3rd color cube, right? And the logistics behind this is I always said I wouldn't do another color cube because right now, like 80% of our people that buy one end up buying 2. And there is a bit of this like completionist mentality of people who like to have the full set. If we have a 3rd one, the full set is now 3, and buying 3 is a big jump from buying 1. So my worry was that by releasing a 3rd, we'd actually end up cannibalizing the product and we'd actually sell less. So I always said, no, we're not doing that. But the demand has been really high for us to do more, which is funny because like between the 2 of these, there are 500 different ideas for people to work with, but yet they want more. People just like more. So we're going to work on a 3 and 4. We've decided that instead of just bringing out 3, we're going to release 2 more. We might change how they look a little bit.
And so then people have the option to buy essentially Series A or Series B, which ends up being 4 cubes overall. But it also gives them sort of multiple steps so that they can buy 1, they can buy 2, they can buy the bundle of 2, or they can buy 4. So again, it's about trying to make sure that we're not disregarding those people that only have a small budget and just want a foot in the door. But we're also, if people want to spend more money, we're not stopping them. So that will give us a much bigger product range. And I'm expecting when we do launch that it will be huge. It's going to be next year. There's no way we can have it done by this year. It's a lot of work to build one, but that's something we're working on. And we do have a second product. And I mean, even saying this, we're sort of like, haven't even got a date for these products yet, but we are looking at building some kind of board game, which sounds really obscure and sounds really disconnected. But there's actually been a lot of thought for how this is going to be perfect for our audience. And I don't really want to say more than that, because if anyone's listening that has the potential to copy it, they might get in first because it's going to be a next year thing. But when that board game comes out, it will all make sense.
Wow. So kind of extending into physical products, it's almost like a franchise where you buy the first book and then you might want the other color cubes as well. You want to get the full collection. So AI and art, discuss. Where are we at?
Yeah, AI is complicated because I know a lot of the world is just openly embracing AI and all the advantages that it has. The art community is quite the opposite. When AI first came out, I actually have a video on my channel where I explored it when it was brand new. No one had access yet, but I had access to DALL-E, early access. So I was exploring it right back then and really curious about it. The thing in the art community is there is a lot of frustration over the ethics of it all, because all of this information and on everything that it can do was all trained on pictures that nobody gave permission for, right? Now, whether that's legal or not, it's a whole big thing. Ethically, artists are very upset because not only is it all trained on their art, it's now coming in and replacing a lot of jobs from the very people that it's trained on. So this makes it complicated because there's a part of me that is like pro-technology and pro-advancement and is really excited by the potential of a lot of these things. There's the other part of me that also directly sees the results of it, both sees how it's hurting a lot of artists, sees how it's hurting a lot of writers in the same way, and also colouring books is the perfect example. I am now struggling with, not struggling is the wrong word, but I see a lot of other artists where Amazon used to be a lot of independent artists flooding Amazon and trying to get their name out there. Now, if you pick the top 100 colouring books on Amazon, half of them are AI. Because the thing about AI compared to an independent artist is an independent artist will spend 8 months working on a colouring book and finally release it. And their heart and soul is in that. An AI colouring book you can whip up in half an hour. And so the people that are making AI books are making like 20 in a week or 20, so many. And they are flooding the market. And because the AI has trained off all of these real artists, the art is good. So consumers, unless they're aware of the AI thing, are just looking at it going, cool, these are beautiful, and actually buying the AI. To be honest, I couldn't draw as good as a lot of the AI books. Where I'm not personally scared of that is that I believe that building the community, that being a resource of people, and that even actually doing video and having my face on that has sort of created a safety thing for me in that people will come to appreciate human art more. And I actually think human art will become more valuable as a result of AI flooding the mediocre marketplace. But it gives people like me a chance to set myself apart. I do feel for the people, though, that don't know how to do that. The people that are just overwhelmed because AI is replacing them and they don't know what to do. And I think it's really disappointing that AI isn't replacing the jobs like cleaning and doing the laundry and data entry. It's replacing the creativity. And that's not what I think anyone wanted AI to do initially. We wanted to have AI replace all the boring jobs so that we could all be more creative and spend more time making art. Instead, the first thing it came for was the artist. So I do think it's a really complicated thing. I actually do use some AI in developing ideas. I try to now stay away from Midjourney. Admittedly, I had a paid account at one point and I've cancelled it because it just didn't sit right after knowing what I know. But ChatGPT, I still use for just helping me to bounce ideas like a person would. But I don't let it ever write anything that's a finished script or anything like that. I want that to come from me. So it's more just like a research assistant where instead of Googling 20 things, I might just ask it to kind of shortcut that process. So I do try to use it to speed up our workflow. We use it for things like enhancing the audio in our videos and cleaning up stuff that without AI is just harder. And the same with Photoshop. I don't like using the generative fill, but I do use it to quickly select stuff and things like that. So I think I love AI for increasing productivity and increasing creativity. I don't like it when it replaces creativity. And right now that's just a massive gray area, and it's really hard to even have a nuanced discussion with a lot of people because there are a lot of people that are just hurt.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's a great brainstorming tool because I do creative writing. When you get stuck, you can kind of just say, give me a mythical beast that I can put in here and I'll give you 10 examples. But you're also aware that if you don't have the logging turned off, you're feeding it back all your ideas to suggest to the next person. So it's learning as much from you as you're learning from it. But it strikes me that your business is quite AI proof. You're doing offline stuff, right? You're doing physical product. You're moving it into stores. You have a personality that people connect with versus, they go on Amazon and they just find a random coloring book. They don't connect with it. Whereas if they know it's yours, they know it's a quality product. They know that a human made it. And then you have community, which is super valuable to people. So it does seem of all the businesses, yours especially being kind of more offline, more community-based, is somewhat more defended against AI than others.
Yeah, and I do think that there's a part of it that we're just going to have to adapt in the world. Whether we love it or hate it, it's here. And it's not going back, and there's only more and more. So I do think it's about I think people need to pay attention. I don't think putting your head in the sand is going to help in this scenario. I think we need to pay attention and look at it, but also use that human element to set ourselves apart. So if AI is writing all the SEO content now, get a human writer, pay someone to write the content. Because I am sure that as the internet floods with more and more AI content, the platforms that are designed for people, so, Google with their search, YouTube with their algorithms and all that, are going to start looking at how can we find ways to rise up the human content and not recommend the AI stuff as much. And that might take a little while because the AI is just developing so fast, they can't keep up. But I do think people that go, great, AI, get it to write me a whole bunch of blog posts, that's not going to work in the long run. I think anything that is a shortcut ultimately doesn't work. The people that put in the effort and put their heart into things and put life into things as people are always going to win in the long run. It's going to hurt for a little while we figure out AI. It's like the birth of the internet all over again. There are going to be jobs that disappear. There are going to be other jobs that are created. And it's hard right now to make a proper assessment of whether it's good or bad because it's a tool. Ultimately, it's how people use it that's good or bad. So it is something that I think we just have to keep an eye on, and everyone just has to look at how it's evolving. And I guess just use your own judgment and your own ethical standards as to how much you use it or how much you don't, or whether you just wait and see. There's a lot with the art side of it that I'm like, let's just wait and see. We won't be using AI art in the next color cubes, for example. It's something that we stopped and said, well, yes, that would be easier. And right now we use a lot of stock photos. So it's kind of like, is there much difference, right? I'm not taking the photos myself. However, we know that it's something that's important to the art community, and ultimately our product is about our audience, so we won't be using any AI art.
It does seem a little bit that it's a race to the bottom because I see in publishing a great deal now, people getting into these AI-created articles. Well, all it takes is for someone to create even more articles or even more optimized articles, and suddenly you're just trying to make the product as cheaply as possible, and your margins just go down and down and down, whereas a human-created quality product can maintain that high margin. So talking about creativity, I guess my last question would be, you just did this documentary about how to be creative, how people can be more creative. What were your learnings?
So one thing, I started sort of just trying to sort of prove that everybody is creative. I actually found it really interesting when I started going into the neuroscience of it all to discover why some people struggle so much with creativity versus others. And we had a lot of discussions with a lot of different people. It's a few months now. So again, my brain tends to go all in on one thing or the next. So it's like, that's done. My brain's moved on. But it did really help us to realize that fear is one of the big things I think that stops people being creative, because creativity is not just art. And I think a lot of people mistake creativity as art. But creativity is just thinking outside the box. And it's something that for me has always come naturally. But then I've also always had everybody tell me I'm a creative person. It's not something I've ever struggled with. And so it was really interesting to see this thing and I guess ask the question of, why do so many people struggle with that? And ultimately, I think a lot of it came down to people are afraid of what happens if they put themselves out there, even in just coming up with an idea at a meeting. And I know for us in our team, it's something we've really taken on of give people room to fail. So when we have our idea meeting, it's like there are no bad ideas. We don't shut down any ideas. Because often it's a bad idea that then, this board game, which again, I'm sorry I can't give more info about it, but it actually came from an idea that wasn't quite a right fit. But instead of shutting the idea down, we just talked it through. And all of a sudden we had this idea that we looked at and went, that's actually perfect for our audience. And it's exactly what they need. But it wouldn't have come if we didn't give room for bad ideas in the first place. And I think that's where, sorry?
It sounds like this inner critic is the real problem. So one of the things you talk about, there's an hour-long documentary on YouTube and obviously the one on Nebula, is that, you start off as a child of being very creative, and then maybe you get some critical voices. You were talking about how at school you're kind of encouraged to maybe do more of the science topics and history. And it seems like, whether it's starting YouTube or wanting to be more creative, being an artist, getting started, believing you can learn art when you're a bit older, it's all about silencing that inner critic that says, oh, this is going to be bad to start with, or not wanting to be bad at something the first time over. And that strikes me as the same thing with starting a YouTube channel or any new venture. So how do people did you find any techniques for getting over that?
I think I've actually learned a lot from my own kids because seeing them, both seeing the way that they just think and whatever, but also seeing how their brain is starting to work through things. One of my sons struggles a lot with being a beginner. He doesn't want to practice, he doesn't want to do anything. And I think this is a really common thing with people and with kids even nowadays, is that they see the people on YouTube and they think that's the standard, even as something as simple as a Minecraft game. And so they don't go through the failures to then become the expert. They don't realize that person's put in thousands of hours to learn parkour in Minecraft, They want to be good on day one. And it's funny because taking my kids through this, I realized we do this as adults as well. We know that you have to be a beginner, but we don't let ourselves be a beginner. So even with art, people are instantly comparing themselves to someone who's been doing it for a year or for 30 years. And so when they don't get it right first time or it doesn't look close, they instantly write it off as a failure and say, I'm not good at this. Instead, I think that one of the biggest techniques I think is important is giving yourself room to fail, and even to the point of just trying something with the expectation of failure just for the sake of doing it. And so I'm actually in my videos this year trying to do that a lot. Right now I'm learning mixed media, and I'm like, try to fail, not try to fail, but like be open to failure to a point that you can get rid of the fear of failure, because then you just never know what you're going to create, and you're going to learn throughout no matter what.
And is it harder when you've already had some success at something to then go all the way back to start at something new?
Yeah, I do think so. Like, I know for me, it's hard when I'm on camera because I'm not just failing, but I'm performing. And it's like, for now, I guess for me, I find it really easy to fail at art because I've made that okay for my audience. I've said, no, this is an open door. Even in my paid membership in our Discord, we have a ugly art channel now, which I created after doing this video because we said, well, no, we need to open up permission for people to fail. But I do still struggle if we fail at something that I didn't expect to fail at. I still find that really hard. And so it's a thing that we have to keep learning. But I grew up at school being a very high achiever. I was good at everything that I did. I was very much a generalist, and I didn't know how to fail. And when I wasn't good at something, I just didn't do it. I just did something else.
Supposedly, it's not great to be sort of declared smart as a kid or a genius when you're told, oh, you're so smart, because you internalize it. And it's sort of more about instilling a growth mindset of, what's next? You could do better at this. How could you grow? Because if you then sort of identify as someone who is smart and good at stuff, and then you're not, that's a struggle later on. So you early on were good at stuff, and then that made it harder later?
Yeah, it was actually for me having kids, that kids are so unpredictable that it's impossible to be a good parent by the standards of maybe what TV tells you is a good parent or whatever. I read all the books. I was like, yeah, this is going to be easy. And then I had kids, and it wasn't easy. And that was actually, it took me 6 months or so to realize it was the first time in my life that I wasn't good at something, but I couldn't quit. And everything else in my life until that point, I was either good at it or I just didn't do it. So I only did the things I was good at. And so it looked like I was good at everything, but actually I was just very selective in the things I did. I was valedictorian at school because I was a very fast learner. But yeah, being a fast learner meant that if I wasn't good at something, I would just give up. And that's something now that I have to really force myself to push through. And actually the video that I did after that creativity one was me relearning how to draw. And that was challenging for me because I make coloring books for a living. According to the world, I can draw. And so it was very confronting for me to actually bring this out and to lean into the sides of drawing that I've always avoided, because it looks like I'm great at drawing because I draw the same thing a lot. And that, I mean, most artists do, right? But I used that video to challenge myself to draw things that were outside of my comfort zone, outside my skill set. And it was embarrassing because a lot of that video I spent going, people expect me to know how to do this and I feel like I'm failing. But again, I tried to just lean into that and go, you know what? I even had some feedback from people that I spoke to on that video of stop making your sketchbook so pretty, because it was like this sketchbook that wasn't rough enough because I was doing it on camera. So there's still this subconscious thing of like performing. And so taking myself through challenges that make me uncomfortable and being okay with uncomfortable has been a really big learning thing for me. And that's something I think that maybe is one of the keys to creativity, is actually learning to sit in the unfamiliar, learning to sit in the uncomfortable, expose yourself to different things that maybe you weren't feeling brave enough to do. And it'd be really interesting to see how people grow out of that.
It sounds like there's a commonality between sort of the restriction that you like of, hey, I've got to complete this really difficult thing because I promised it for my channel. And hey, I have kids and I have to figure it out and I can't back out of it. So is there some value to people of kind of making a commitment pact, like, hey, I'm going to try YouTube. I'm going to make 100 videos and I'm going to see what happens. Or I'm going to try being an artist. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, maybe it's breaking it down into little things. I'm going to draw every day for a year and then I'm just going to see where I'm at. Like, would a commitment help?
I think definitely. And I think in some ways, if they have a sense of accountability, this obviously depends very much on personality. But I know for me, when I've said to my audience, this is what I'm going to do, then I feel like I need to finish this. That 100,000 diamond thing, if I was doing it for my own personal interest, there's no way I would have made it through. But I knew that it was for my audience. And because I've always made it okay to fail on camera, even the times when I was like overwhelmed, it was like, well, this is part of my story. It's I actually love, there's a new word that I feel like Gen Z are using now, where your lore, it's part of your lore.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it's beautiful, but it's, it's not, nobody wants to watch you just be good at everything. People want to see you not struggle, but people want to see you go through those challenges. And, like putting my hand up and being like, yay, I'm the best at this. Yeah, look at what I did. Is sort of not, it's very surface level and it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't give you any fulfillment in life. But to be able to work through a challenge and then have people leave comments saying, because you stepped up and took the challenge, I've now stepped up and taken the challenge. Thank you for that. That's been a really big thing for me that has been a driving factor in when these things do get hard, pressing on and doing it anyway. There is a video on my channel from a while ago where I actually set a very public goal to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, when I only had 15,000 subscribers at the time. Had a few people criticize me and be like, who do you think you are for even setting this goal? But because I made it a very public thing, I then felt like I had to do it for the audience. It wasn't even about me. It wasn't about having a big channel. I set it as a challenge, so I wanted to do it. And then by the end, I told the audience I would do this. They're vouching. This is more for them than me now. I actually didn't make that goal, but I made it to like 97,000 by the end of the year, which is actually crazy growth and a huge achievement. But I felt like I'd failed because I'd set this so high goal, and we got there in like February, and I made a video about it and what that process for me was about learning as well. Yes.
I've seen this with a lot of leaders. I know Disney, he wanted to open Disneyland on the day he wanted to open, and they said it's not going to be ready. And you know what? People rise to the challenge. Or Elon Musk puts deadlines on people that seem super aggressive, and maybe they miss them, but they don't miss them as much as if you set a reasonable deadline. Or Steve Jobs. So if you say, hey, we're launching on this date, and then work backwards, that seems to work. So in that spirit, is there a challenge that you'd like to set for yourself publicly over the next year? Is there a subscriber goal? Is it releasing this new product? Like a year from now, what challenge will you have completed?
I do think it's probably releasing new products. I actually haven't set subscriber goals for a very long time. I think after that experience of the 100,000, I realized there's this great quote that I've heard that any measure, as soon as it becomes a goal, ceases to be a good measure. And I think that really describes something like subscriber goals really well, of like subscriber growth is a sign of a healthy channel. But as soon as you start focusing on the subscriber numbers, you're going to be tempted to take shortcuts or do things based solely on the views. And that's not necessarily what's best for you as a person. Now, this is different for everyone, obviously, but I know for me, I don't want to build a channel that's just big for the sake of being big. I want it to be impactful. I want the people that are connected with us to really feel like a part of the community. And so it makes it really hard to set physical goals around that. It's like, our goals are to feel more, it's immeasurable stuff. Like the goals of what we want to set are far more immeasurable because I don't want to be focused on those superficial numbers. I do want to see growth. And so I sort of think for us, it's like moving forward is kind of the goal. And we do have like project goals. So like releasing this product by this date. By next year, I'd want to have the 2 new color cubes out. I want to have next year's planner and potentially more variations of that. And I want to have our coloring book out that we're working on at the moment. So those are project goals, but I don't know that projects and goals are necessarily the same. Goals are often something that's a bit more out of your reach. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with it and congrats on all your success. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. This has been great.